Let the bodies hit the floor. Let the bodies hit the floor. Let the bodies hit the floor. Let the bodies hit the floor.
I'm Jack Bush.
I'm Matt Keller.
Pierre Capoletti.
And Ben Trina.
And we're here to talk to you about the Bodies exhibit. We went to Atlantic Station about 2 weeks ago to see this exhibit for ourselves, and we learned a lot, I think. Don't you agree, Matt?
Oh yeah, I mean, like, the main theme of the exhibit is to see is to know. And what that means is, basically, we take our bodies for granted every day, because, you know, we've grown up with them all of our life, and they do some amazing things, but we don't realize it. And so what the Bodies exhibit does is it opens up our body to let us explore and find out, like, all the amazing things that our body does while we don't even realize it. And so, like, the to see is to know is kind of saying, like, the Bodies exhibit lets you see it, and now you can appreciate your body even more.
When you walk to the exhibit, you first see this expanded skull. It really shows all the parts of the skull, and then it's really it's a good introduction to the entire museum as a whole, because it really shows that the body is made up of a whole bunch of tiny parts that come together to create something whole. So when you first walk in, you see the skeletal system. You see all the bones of the body, from the large bones of the femur to the little bones in your own ear that show you, that make you hear and produce sound waves in your head. You move on to the circulatory system to see much of how the heart works and all the parts that go in with that, from the lungs to the heart itself, to the veins within the body, and then the digestive system, and see the stomach and how it can expand. An interesting fact, it can expand, I think, double its size if you're full, and then many things like that for the exhibit. So it really shows each separate part of the body and how they come together to create life.
At the end of the Body Museum is displayed that says, all of these bodies have been treated with the respect that they deserve. Now, some people may feel that the Bodies Museum is extremely controversial. The Bodies Museum is really can be considered controversial because it's displaying real human bodies for the whole world to see, showing the very innards of a human being. It's hard to imagine sometimes that each one of these bodies on display was actually a person alive and well. However, probably the most controversial exhibit was the fetus exhibit. Before entering in this portion of the museum, there's a sign saying that you can skip this part. Inside this dark, low-lit hallway is a display filled with miscarriage children. I guess that's a way you can describe it. Ranging from 5 weeks to 38 weeks. It did leave a lasting impact on me, at least, to see how human development begins. So do you guys have anything to add on the controversial elements of the Bodies Museum?
I'm here more to talk about the general controversy in total, but I mean, all these bodies, they knowingly donated their bodies to science and to an exhibit much like this. So where people could feel like it's wrong to display these bodies, every person was knowing that when you know, their eventual death, that they were going to donate their bodies to science, whether it be for research or for display for the rest of the world to learn about how the rest of our bodies work. So I'm generally okay with the fact that these are actual human bodies, and really for knowledge. I mean, much like in the Renaissance, people would have open autopsies for the world, or not the world, but anyone who was there to see what was going on.
Yeah.
So I'm very much okay with being actual human bodies.
Right, I mean, I can definitely see how this exhibit would be considered controversial to some, but it kind of depersonalizes the exhibit in a way, because you're not looking at the entire body as a whole, you're looking at different dissections of it. And so you kind of forget while you're going through the exhibit that this was an actual arm, or this was an actual leg, or that it wasn't even actual skeleton. I mean, you know, it really does a great job of kind of depersonalizing it and making it as uncontroversial as possible.
Yeah, like, agreeing with Jack, that the fact that why is it controversial for a person to have his own right in choosing what will happen to his body after he's dead? If anything, he's giving it to, I guess, a greater cause, because if normally you die, either you're cremated or you just go into the ground and sit there and do nothing. Why not you put your body to use even after you pass?
Right, I mean, like, obviously these people wanted somebody to know more about their body, so they donated to this exhibit to help inform people.
And when you're in the exhibit, you really don't sense the fact that this. I mean, you see the person or see the body as an exhibit and not so much as a person. The anonymity with the body is really, I think, very much there. So you really don't feel like you're looking at Joe or Steve. You're looking at the exhibit, trying to learn about the human body. So.
Now, what about the fetus exhibit? Wasn't that?
That is a little more controversial because, I can safely assume, as long as everyone else, that the fetuses really had no say in whether they could be, displayed or not.
Now, disclaimer, before entering the exhibit, it did mention that each of these fetuses died of natural causes before birth actually happened. So
that is...
So none of them were abortion?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, okay.
So that is, a fairly helpful thing. The fetus... I guess it was the mother's discretion to say that this baby could be used for display. And although it is, much more controversial, I'd say, than the rest of the bodies themselves, it still is just, when I was looking at it, I also just saw yet another exhibit, not so much a bunch of the baby per se.
I personally thought it was the most powerful exhibit in the whole museum.
Mm-hmm.
Like, to view human development starting from the genesis of just gestation to the end of birth.
Definitely. You see so much growth during that period. So it was definitely the most controversial, but it was also the most informative, in my opinion.
I was in complete awe the whole time. I kept pointing out every single week of the birth, the pregnancy cycle to all of you guys, because I thought it was the most impressive thing I've ever seen. It blew my mind.
It really is amazing what you see when you have it.
Kind of wild that we start off smaller than a penny. And then
actually, on one of the walls, it said that you were a single cell for about half an hour.
Yeah.
And then, during those first 9 months, even during the first 9 weeks, your growth is exponential.
Mm-hmm.
In between just the short time of a week.
Mm-hmm. So it really is amazing.
Crazy.
And I do very much commemorate the museum for putting this exhibit aside from the rest of them, making it almost out of the way. We, in fact, skipped it originally, and just looking backwards, we so happened to see that there was another exhibit on the side. So they did a very good job of, placing this exhibit to the side in case anyone would be sensitive to the subject, that you hardly didn't even notice it was a part of the museum in general.
So, what is the actual history behind this museum? How did it originate?
Well, people have been taking apart the human body for science ever since, from the Egyptian times. They did dissections, they did mummifications, all that stuff, just to learn more about who they are and what goes on. But the dissections used in the bodies exhibit really originated from Renaissance time.
So they can actually slow down the decaying process?
Yeah, they can. They use a process called the corrosion casting process. The bodies are dissected to feature the specific structures, so the arm or the leg, for example, and then it's immersed in acetone to evacuate the water from the segment. Then it's placed in a silicone polymer bath in a vacuum chamber. Now the acetone leaves the body, and the polymer enters it where the evaporated acetone left, so then the whole body is filled up with silicone instead of water, which preserves the body.
Time for Random Facts!
Did you know, as babies, we had 300 bones, but when we're adults, we only have 206 bones?
Did you know bone is 5 times stronger than mild steel?
Did you know that if you used all the muscles in your body, you could lift more than 10 tons?
And that concludes our interesting facts. Now on to the actual critique of the museum. Although we all very much enjoyed it, there are still a few things that we found either offsetting or off-putting with the museum that we thought could be fixed. Matt, do you have something to say about that?
Oh yeah, the museum was very interesting. They really did a great job in catching your interest at the very beginning. The only thing was I kind of lost interest about halfway through the museum because I got tired of seeing the same thing over and over again. And especially they threw all these walls of text in there. And it was really a lot to take in. And the standard person probably wouldn't just want to sit there and read all of this information. Even though it was really interesting information, just the average person, it's a lot to take in. If they would have done something like, put some display screens on there and had something moving, something interactive, it would have added to the museum, I think. I mean, just, even just like a little display screen showing how some system works instead of just showing the system, show how it works. I mean, I just think that would have added a lot to the museum experience as a whole.
Thanks for that, Matt. Piero, now anything to say?
Well, Jack, when I first went into the museum, I thought everything was really interesting. I thought all the bodies were displayed in this very appealing manner. The only thing, we reached this one exhibit where this guy was holding a basketball, and he was almost mid-stride, and you could see all of his muscles, and there was this banner next to him saying all the interesting facts about him. And then I thought it was really interesting until Ben pointed out, dude, what if this guy didn't even like basketball? And that got me thinking, what if he hated basketball? What if he loved soccer, and then for some reason he was strongly opposed to basketball, like he had a terrible childhood experience while playing basketball? And then after that, I just couldn't take any of the poses seriously. They all seemed cheesy, like it was ridiculous. And after walking through this maze of cheesy poses, we reached this last room that was just filled with information. They had over 10 points on how they preserved the bodies and how they said that they treated the bodies to the utmost respect. I thought it was just an overwhelming amount of information, and they should have at least sprinkled that information across the whole museum, because at the end it was just overwhelming. And then after that, you walk into this gift shop that was just extremely claustrophobic. There was barely any space to move, and they had this TV displaying very interesting information about a whole bunch of bodies' functions and stuff like that. But the only thing is that it was put into a corner and at the exit of the gift shop, so people trying to leave, it was just impossible to get out, and it was just running into other people. It was just an awkward experience.
Ben, do you want to add anything to that?
I would like to. Now, come on, guys. The body exhibit wasn't all that bad. There was actually quite a few interesting and good qualities that the exhibit had. For instance, each single one of the display cases had a 360-degree view. You could see every aspect of the body part. When you saw the man outstretched with his arm for the basketball, you could see every angle that you possibly would imagine. You can see from his back side, you can see it from his front side, and they did leave everything exposed. Another awesome bit was you did not actually have to have any previous knowledge of the museum or the body, for example. You didn't actually have to know that the heart had arteries and valves moving through it. You could just actually get to see it, just there, without any previous knowledge, any need to know what it is or what it is, because it was just really cool. Another awesome part was that it had good spacing. You did not feel rushed at all. Every exhibit, I guess you could say, had its own viewing space, so you could take your time, leisurely walk there, and you weren't crowded together with other people. You can be at one end of the room looking at the skull, for example, and the other group of members could be looking at the nose. So that was really nice, so you didn't have to actually be rushed by other people jostling you, trying to find, that one really cool body, for example. And finally, everything was actually really interesting, from the circulatory, to the respiratory, to the gestation, to the structural systems, to the muscle systems. Each and every part of the Bodies Museum had a very awe-inspiring and impactful exhibit, and it was very nice. So, even though the Bodies Museum did have a little bit, or a lot, I guess you could say, of negative things going for it, the good outweighs the bad in this situation.
And that concludes our critique of the Bodies exhibit.
That's the end!